trying to give him the shame? Or was it murder or was it suicide? What are the facts, what are they trying to hide? It has been on someone, so why on him? Saying Bridges was innocent, but they tried to put him down. Keep their records clean, why not blame it on him?
Okay, my name is Liam Scully. I've worked at the Discovery for probably about 47 years, man and boy.
I'm Lee Dern, and I own it.
I talk a lot, make tea and coffee for people, and occasionally sell an LP or single or a 78.
The LPs are very tactile things, and unless you actually play them, you don't really get that. It's not a bug, it's just a pleasure of actually being tactile, actually taking it out, putting it on a record player.
What was the first record that you ever bought?
Whoa, that's difficult. My memory's so bad. I mean, I think the first album I ever bought, properly, yeah, it probably was a Top of the Pops album, just for the girly covers in those days, those kind of cover albums you had called Top of the Pops, where they were all really bad cover versions. All those, I probably did have all those covers in my collection somewhere.
It was a toss-up between Angelic Upstarts or X-Ray Specs. If it wasn't Angelic Upstarts, it would have been X-Ray Specs.
Little girls should be seen and not heard. Oh, bondage of the earth! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Why do you think the shop's lasted so long?
Because I work here. Well, that's certainly one of the reasons, and the longevity of the shop. I think we're fairly unique in the fact that we are very personable. You know, we like to think that we know what we're doing, and we're always here to help people. I think, you know, rather than somebody turning up somewhere and, you know, you're pointed in a direction of a particular genre of music, you know, we will go out of our way to, you know, say, can we help you, you know, offer you a cup of tea and coffee, as we like to do. And that's certainly a big part of it, I would say.
It's lasted so long because of the diversity of music what we sell here, from classical to what we do now is some hip hop and dance.
We've always had people that have done that right back, and I think that was, you know, thinking back 15, 20 years ago and stuff, when people started sampling James Brown, whoever it may be, we always had all that stock. So I think, again, kids have been doing that for many years, and I think that was probably a good help for us, because I think, you know, again, I think a lot of DJs and samplers have kind of pushed the vinyl thing over those years, you know, and we've been in a position where we can, because we've been here so long and we know what we're doing, we've been able to provide kids with samples, because you're aware of tracks and what's got a break and what's got a loop on it, and again, that's just us being here and knowing what we're doing, really. I've got nothing against it at all. I think the lovely thing with, you know, you mentioned earlier about collectors who've come in and you know, hunted out samples. A lot of those collectors, and then they become regulars, and then they become, a lot of them do become, I suppose you'd call them friends or not, but those guys who probably, they then go out of their way to buy those samples and play, you know, so by sampling or by listening to a sample, I think that turns a lot of people on to that genre of music, whether it's a jazz track on Blue Note, whether it's a James Brown sample. You always find those guys don't literally just want the sample, they do end up buying that vinyl and collecting it that way. So from that point of view, I think it's a good thing. I think when I'd not been working in the shop very long, in the 70s, we had, there was a guy who used to work in the shop, a very famous DJ at the time, Erskine T, and he kind of knew everybody a lot of the Birmingham jazz musicians, in particular Stevie Winwood, who was formed Spencer Davis, Traffic, who was quite a big, and he was in the shop one day, and I was in the back. He'd come in to speak to Erskine, and he was standing around in the shop, and I just said to my manager, it's one of those things where you look at somebody and go, I just said to my manager, who's that? And Jimmy, the manager, said, that's Stevie Winwood. And for some reason I just kind of doubted what he said, and I went, that ain't Stevie Winwood. Because you imagine these stars to be really tall, and he was just kind of small and very kind of haunched up. And I'll tell you what, I've never had somebody just turn around and look at you with that kind of look of disdain and going like, yeah, I am Stevie Winwood.
Once I lived the life of a millionaire, spent all my money, didn't have a care, taking all my friends out for a mighty good ride, bootleg liquor, champagne and wine.
A couple of weeks after that, Joe Cocker was in the shop, and again he was another small guy, and my manager said, there's another small celebrity in the shop, do you want to go and serve him? There's Joe Cocker's over there. Well, I suppose without remembering, I would imagine we've had, you know, the Robert Plants and everybody else in their day. I mean, all those guys, so many Birmingham musicians or Midlands musicians would have been, you know, the Jeff Lynnes and everybody like that, would have been in the shop when they were growing up and trying to get inspired and buying probably, you know, imported soul and R&B, just to give them an idea where, you know, maybe what kind of path they were going to be going down. But of course you don't kind of remember any of that at the time. I mean there's supposed to be because where we are now, which is in Bromsgrove Street, in the 60s we were in Hurst Street, which is, it was like a mini Carnaby Street, I suppose, a very, very small shop. So there were lots of, you know, not big musicians of that day, but obviously people that went on to be big, like Robert Plant. And in the old shop we had, upstairs we had 2 listening booths, and outside the listening booths there was a kind of stand-up piano, and you'd get the odd musician who came in that was up there and they'd be tinkling away on the piano, and I'm sure Robert Plant did that. Although I hope if he ever sees this interview, and he might get in touch and dispute that, but I mean that's something I was told anyway. This is only hearsay. But supposedly there was a rumour going round that the embryonic stages of Zeppelin maybe happened upstairs in the discery, but again I would imagine that's more myth than fact. I think the other one with Robert Plant is that I think it was probably not long after we moved from Hurst Street to here, a record that Robert Plant always wanted, a single by Tommy Cooper, the old English comedian. So he made some records. He made a record called Don't Jump Off the Roof, Dad, and Robert Plant always wanted that. So the old manager Jimmy, we obviously bought a collection one day, and there was a copy of that in the collection, and he duly phoned up Plant's management to say, you know, we've got you a copy of this single, although he didn't come in personally. Somebody did come in and pick it up on his behalf. So yeah, that's probably
amazing.
Who else have we had in?
Chaka Khan.
Chaka Khan.
Chaka Khan.
Chaka Khan.
Chaka Khan, let me rock it, Chaka Khan. Let me rock it, that's all I wanna do. Chaka Khan, let me rock it, Chaka Khan. What
a lovely lady Chaka Khan was. My word, she was just gorgeous, absolutely lovely. I got a cuddle as well. I can still remember that lovely cuddle, it was great. I've always collected records, and sometimes even just for covers. As I mentioned earlier with the scantily clad ladies on top of the Pops albums, I'd still probably buy those if I saw them in a car boot or something. And a record that I probably wouldn't sell, I suppose. I've recently bought records, probably in the last 5 years. That there's a jazz LP I bought in a collection that I'm really fond of and I play a lot, which is Joe Harriott and an Indian musician called John Mayer. It's called Indo Jazz Suite, and I tend to find myself, I've been playing that an awful lot over the last couple of years. So I think maybe that might be that, and probably the Beatles' White LP. We established in '52, solely selling, well, shellac 78s pre-vinyl. So, I mean, there might be some other shops out there. We throw out the gauntlet.
Yes.
If there's a shop out there that's older than '52, solely selling records, then we want to hear
Come
from
back
you.
to us, ain't it?
We want to hear from you. We'll put the gloves on and we'll sort it out man to man. Records at dawn and all that. The original owner was a guy called Morris Hunting, so he established the shop. I think he started selling records himself while he was still at school. I think his love of and the jazz the shop was founded on his love of early jazz. So I think he initially did it like probably a lot of kids do at school. Whether you swap a Conker for a pair of football boots, or he was probably swapping a few 78s for I don't know what, but a compass or something. So his love kind of moved on from there, and then.
But there is quite a lot of writing about him, isn't there?
Oh yeah, I mean
he's been to a lot of the early jazz dudes.
I mean Morris was part of one of the original Birmingham Jazz Societies, and there's a picture of Morris at a dinner in London, sitting next to Billie Holiday. So I mean, his credentials back in that that jazz world is second to none really. So he kind of moved the shop on. I think he had various small little enterprises, and then eventually acquired the what you probably class as the original discery. I think originally it was a premises somewhere around the back of where Marks and Sparks is, and then he took on the shop in Hurst Street in the '60s, and just built everything up from there really. So I mean it's an amazing legacy that he left. He started with jazz, and then we just branched out from that to encompass every genre of music really, and then Jimmy, who's the old manager, Jimmy Shannon, who he was just an incredible bloke. I mean, again, he was my mentor. He's a man whose knowledge of music and his love of people. Record Store Day that's just happened Saturday gone. I said at the end of the day, I think that's been the best day I think I've ever had in the shop. And it just took me back. We were busy. The shop was full pretty much all day, and again that just kind of reminded me of when the shop had its heyday. When the height of it in the 70s and 80s, where the shop was always busy on a Saturday. In my opinion, the best day I've ever had in the shops. And I've been here 40 odd years. It was like all my Christmas Eves and Christmas days all rolled into one.
Well, being a Jehovah's Witness, that don't mean a lot, does it?
Absolutely right. And I've moved on from that. I'm now an atheist. So,
And I think Trevor Burton done a fantastic gig.
We had Trevor in the shop. Yeah, absolutely. Birmingham legend in his own lunchtime. Kind of takes me back to the heyday of our shop back in the 70s and stuff, and it was always heaving on a Saturday, and it was just so reminiscent of that. He is the future of the discreet. Well, if he shut shop up, then
it would be a pity, which I don't.
It would be. I don't want to start selling the big issue at my time of life.
No, this is true. You wouldn't sell many copies.
I wouldn't. No. I'd give them away. I'm too kind like that. I mean, no, go on.
The future of the discreet, hopefully, it's onwards and upwards. To be honest, I know I've had a good teacher within Liam Sculler, which I am really indebted to with what he's taught me so far. I can now do my shoelaces.
Well, I haven't taught him too much, because if I teach him all, he might sack me. So I'm just telling him little bits. And
I don't think the sacking will come before the retirement. I mean, I harp on, but if it wasn't for Liam, and to a degree Jimmy Shannon as well, them pair did run this shop for the previous owners, and they was doing it on a shoestring, to be honest. So I do take my hat off to Liam.
You're very kind. I'm welling up here. I mean,
don't.
Where's the tissue? Well, thank you for that.
Use your sock like you normally do.